Welcome to the Divine Guidance, your prophetic update for the month of April 2026. My name is Anika Apple. I am a prophetic advisor and author, and I am here to share an update with you. For the past several years, I've been delivering divine guidance each month to ensure that what God is sharing with us is clear and available to everyone. We are in a very complex time, as you know, and it is a blessing that what God has been pouring through me has been able to help us prepare for the time that we're in. There is so much more to come, and we'll get into some of the themes that are up for this month that we should be aware of. But before we do that, I just wanted to share a couple of updates. So, for many of you, you've had the opportunity to tap into the divine guidance as a part of the Anika Apple Podcast. I am announcing this month that we are shifting the nature and focus of the podcast to and renaming it. And so I'm very excited about that. And with that, it means that the divine guidance will still be here. However, it will live on its own. And so that's no change in terms of how you find it. We will still be here on YouTube. You'll still be able to catch me live on Facebook. But there will be more to come about how you can get more deeply connected with what God is saying about the time that we're in. And I'm excited to share that with you in a few weeks. In the meantime, though, I would invite you to check out the Healing is Required podcast that launches this month. So it will replace the Anika Apple podcast simply because all of the conversations that we have been having around leadership, community, the divine guidance, and of course, healing have come back to healing being required. It is the number one thing that we need to have in this moment. It is critical for us individually, for us to thrive in our businesses, create and sustain our relationships and our families, as well as to heal the world. And so we'll talk more about that because it actually is a theme for the divine guidance today. But just make sure that if you have not already subscribed to the podcast, that you do that as it launches later this month. All right. So for those of you who are new, welcome. A couple of ground rules. I always share a couple of things at the beginning of each episode. First and foremost, anytime you ever hear a prophetic word, you should always be taking it back to God. So what I encourage you to do today is to listen in, to take your notes, to grab the key themes, and then to go sit with God. And the two things you're looking for, one, you always want to validate the word. You want to know for sure that you can trust what has been said, that you heard it in a way that honors what God's intentions are. And then you want to always ask, God, what is it that you desire for me to do with this word? How can I apply this to my life? And so that's a really important thing to make sure that you do as well. So you always want to be tapping in to make sure that you understand the application of it. The other thing that I would tell you is for many of you, you might have a different spiritual religious belief than I, and that is okay. Whatever it is that you consider as higher than yourself, you can consider that as when I am referring to God, but know that, I am of the Christian faith and I speak to God. I also am very, very clear about what God says about how they love all of their children. And so I come to represent God's love and a commitment to ensure that we're aware of what is happening in the world. The preparation for the season up ahead requires you to build relationships with God. It is just that simple. I wish that there was another way to illustrate the weight of importance of having the individual relationship with God. I feel like I'm saying it every single time I come on for these episodes, but I will tell you, there just are things coming up ahead that will not be able to be articulated to one that they can relay it to everyone else, and then it's sufficient for each person. Let me see if I can unwind that and say it more simply. What God says to me is for me, right? There will be some things, some directions and things as things continue to happen in the world that are going to be very specific to people or to groups of people that will not be applicable for everyone. One of the best examples that God gave me a couple of episodes ago was like these moments where like chaos is breaking out. And for example, imagine you're at a festival, right? And everyone takes off running in one direction, but you feel the pull to go in another direction. Like those are the moments where you've got to be clear that who you're hearing from is God. And the way that you want to do that is by building an ongoing relationship. It costs you nothing to take a few minutes out of every day to sit in prayer, meditation, to be seeking God. It costs you nothing. Literally the time that you would take to have, conversation in passing, or perhaps you might not even give yourself space to have some moments to yourself. You will need that because it is the thing that is going to protect you, keep you safe, whatever the dynamics are that you are feeling as you hear me deliver this message. That's what you need to be aware of. And for many of you who are looking for breakthroughs in your business and you're worried about what's happening in this time, sitting with God is what gives you clarity about what is possible in this moment. And as I have said many times before, there are a lot of opportunities that happen when we are going through the kinds of dynamics that are happening in the world. And there's so many different things that are happening right now. So we have a lot of opportunity being created. Where there are problems, there are people who have the ability to solve those problems. The things that you tend to get most riled up about, they provide it provides an inkling for you to tap into what may be on the fringe of your purpose. For some of you, you will know those things to evolve truly and reveal your full purpose. But for many of you, it's like just the area of interest that is pulling you over will help you on your path to more fully understanding both who you are and what your purpose to do. So don't discount the urge that you feel to be a part of the solution for things that you see happening in the world, because it is with intention. So I want to just get into what God shared with me before the episode. And I will tell you that before 5 minutes ago, before I started the broadcast, God had given me not very much for this month, but a ton of themes across the last several weeks. There is a lot going on in the world. And if you remember nothing else from this month's divine guidance, I want you to remember this. You cannot trust what you see with your eyes. You cannot trust. I want you to recognize that you are in a time of smoke and mirrors, that there is so much happening and it looks very pointed. It's very intentional to send you in a direction to create what God is showing me in this moment is like it's a stage, right? It's thematic. They want you to see and experience things in a certain way to evoke emotion, to allow you to say yes to what is being rolled out to you. And that is not the way. We are in a time of more manipulation than I don't even have a comparison for what it looks like. And the reason it's very different than the other similar experiences that have happened in history is because of modern technology. The reality is that because technology sits in your hand 24/7, there's a reason they call your endless scrolling doom scrolling, right? It happens because the more and more that you're taking in, typically their energy starts to wane. You feel drained, right? Because it's like, oh, that's funny or that's exciting, but then it's like one thing after the next, and it starts your mind swirling with how big the problems seem to feel in the world. And before you know it, you've moved yourself out of faith and hope into despair. So this reality of what has changed in the world is that not only are there things happening, but we are also seeing an exaggerated story of things that have been created to spark fear. That in no way means to diminish the amount of real fear that should exist for the things that are happening in the world. But if you think about the dynamics, I want you to take a step back for a moment and recognize that in the situations that exist today, If there's already something that people are fearful of, that there's discomfort around, if you could spark more flame underneath it, you could get people to pretty much do anything, right? So we're looking at a situation where, as more and more fear is created, someone, some people, something can be created as the obvious solution. And what should we be wary of? The obvious solution. So the other day I was seeing, it was like, all of these sheep funneled into just one tunnel, right? And it's just like funneled in. They're coming from all over the place, right? And it's like being in like, where is the tunnel going? The end of the tunnel was right at the edge of a cliff. And it's like, they will just go over the edge of the cliff, which is why it's so important for a shepherd to be there with the sheep that is clear about the direction they're taking the sheep in. And if the shepherd doesn't know, if the shepherd is not paying attention, if the shepherd does not remember the responsibility to take care of the sheep, they absolutely can either be wayward or they can be led over the edge. And that is what we are dealing with right now. You want to be in a position to run your race. And what that looks like for you is being very clear about what it is that you're here to do, why it is that you're called to this time. Why did you say yes to come at this particular moment in history? And what are the things that God is speaking to you about? What is God asking you to do in the world? What do you know your purpose is? Because if you are running your race and you are focused on the things that you know you're supposed to deliver in the earth, you can be assured that you will be a part of the change that needs to happen. But the more that we sit back and are reserved and are allowing our minds to be directed to what other people want the story to be, the more vulnerable we are. And I'm not talking about the vulnerability that we need to have in order to be good humans, to be good leaders, to heal. I'm not talking about that. I mean being vulnerable to manipulation. The other thing I would say to you is to be careful about who you establish as enemies. A few years ago, God was showing me this time, and God was showing me this time, and there were some scenes that I saw, and one of the scenes was so difficult to watch. And it was a man standing in a circle of people, and he had a weapon, right? And he was looking at the people. Some looked just like him, some had different color skin, some were female, but just looking at this group of people and trying to figure out which one was their real adversary, which one was the real enemy, who was really against him. And because we have gone through all of these different things and are so heavily focused on what divides us or separates us from one another, we've gotten to the place where people are so focused on the differences that they cannot see all of the things that bind us together as humanity. And that's a problem, because the further we get away from seeing ourselves as a part of humanity, the easier it is to be desensitized to what's happening to your brothers and sisters. That's a problem for us. When you think about how people talk about there being strength in numbers, there's a beautiful proverb that says, if you want to go far, you go together, right? Like, you don't want to be off by yourself. But the way that we are being picked and pushed into these individual corners and looking at one another almost with the desire to protect ourselves because we see each other as enemies, it's creating an opportunity for us to be picked off. And there's not a better way to say that. It's like, as you separate yourself from the whole, it's so much easier for you to be targeted, attacked, and for, things to happen. And that is not where we are intended to be. We have to do the opposite of the thing that we are being led to in this moment. We're being led towards fear. What does it look like for us to stand in faith and to really double down on hope? We are called to, look at one another and see each other as enemies, whether it's a political belief or it's race or ethnicity or even our status. Like, there's so many things that are trying to separate us. And that is never God's intention. And for those who follow my faith, we can go into the Bible and talk about the scriptures that talk about how you are supposed to treat your neighbors, treat the aliens. Like, there's so much that is clear in the word about God's expectation for us to love one another. We go down a rabbit hole about it needing to look exactly in the way that we honor God. And that's not what God is calling us to in this moment. It's first to love, first to treat one another as sisters and brothers, first to build relationship, to protect humanity. Because how can you even educate or learn from one another if you're just fearful for your life, for your livelihood? And for so many people, we've been in fight, flight, or freeze for so long, we cannot even breathe to even be able to hear a perspective that's different than the thing that we believe is going to keep us safe. And so from there, I go back to the problem that the issue that we have right now is that this dynamic is created for us to stay in the place of fear. At some point in the very near future, you will begin to hear these things that sound like obvious solutions. They're obvious solutions because an obvious problem is being created. Thank you. God has given me the clarity to share something with you that I saw many, many months ago. And in short, I'm like, how do I even describe this? I will just say, for those of you who live in the US, you have some figures, well known, that you've assumed are like creating all of the chaos. It's so much bigger than that. It's so much bigger than that. And so even when the word I'm hearing is like spewing venom, even when you're like feeling that energy towards a particular person or group of people or certain people who you see as sitting in power, that it feels like they're making all the decisions and all that stuff, it's not the truth. They're in a place of power, but it's perceived. You've got to know there's something bigger behind all of that. And what God showed me is that eventually those things will be revealed, but by the time it is, it's really too late for us to change the course of what happens, which is why we need to be able to be clear about what God is saying to us about our individual roles. What is it for us to do in this time? I am clear. My work is to do this, to be God's prophet, but also to talk to you about healing, because the more work that you do in your own personal healing, the easier it will be for you to stand with your brothers and sisters, the easier it will be for us to change the trajectory of what's happening in the world. We heal through frequency and resonance. As we raise our frequency, we can begin to change the dynamic of what is happening energetically in the world. We support other people in raising their frequency. We cannot do that if we are in fear and desperation, if we are constantly doom scrolling, if we are always believing all of the rhetoric that is being given to us. We have to do better than that. And we cannot allow all of the information that we are taking in to be bigger than what we believe we have the ability to tap into when we are connected to spirit, because that is just simply not true. For many of you in a moment, even as you hear this, I see people listening to the replay, and you've been sitting in a place where you forget that you have creation energy on the inside of you. You were born to create, made from the very same things as the stars are made of. You were created with such incredible intention. Purpose was placed on the inside of you. You were designed to do something big and impactful in the world. And what big means is relative, right, to each of us. But you are full of creation power. And so if we believe that greater is he that is within us than he that is in the world, then there is nothing that we cannot do. With that kind of strength, clarity of vision, purpose, intentional decision, we have the ability to create change in the world beyond what you can even believe in this moment, but we have to show up to do it. So part of this in April and beyond for this year is about running your race. And I will tell you that there are tough times ahead. There's so many challenges. And what God continues to stay close to God. Keep seeking God. And wherever you believe that relationship is, however you find your way to commune, that is important, that it is a daily and regular discipline. It's not about simply going to, a place to worship. It is about you being in constant worship. It's about you being in relationship with God. It's about you listening to what God is saying. The other thing that I will say is that I'm going to release this in full when it's time. But there is something, just give me the words, God. If we go back to some of the dynamics happening here in the US, which is where I sit, so I'm very familiar with what is happening here, and specifically called at this particular time to focus in on what is happening in this country. The very thing that people have been saying they stand for is what they're going to end up destroying. There's a lot of belief that the decisions being made now are in alignment with what it looks like to do God's work here. And I know I'm being evasive because I want to deliver this whole piece in its entirety and honor God in doing that. But if you can imagine that some of the decisions and things that are being made on larger stages in the country, I'm not talking about individual churches and things like that, but on large scale, it's like the very thing that people are saying they're defending is the very thing they're going to end up destroying. That likely doesn't give you very much peace right now. It doesn't give me peace either. But I recognize that what's happening, that the destruction that is happening right now is very purposeful. And so, what is important for you to know is that on the other side of this, there is going to be a lengthy season of rebuilding. And that rebuilding, what needs to be established, not reestablished, not rebuilt, but building and established anew. It needs to be led by people who are clear about what it is that we're here to do, about what it really looks like to ground a country in the kind of values that we said this was founded on. If you look back at history and the cycles and things, it's no wonder that we find ourselves in this point, because you cannot build on top of the atrocities and things that have happened and think that that is solid ground. We haven't fixed the things that happened. There hasn't been full truth and reconciliation. And interestingly, in a time like this, where there are other parts of the world, other countries that are acknowledging the things that have happened, we stand as one that have said we are not clearly acknowledging the atrocity. And that's a problem, because you cannot keep building on top of what is not true. And until truth and reconciliation comes, we have challenge. And if you don't agree with that, I encourage you to take that all the way back to God and let God show you. So there's a couple other things. One of the big things that God put on my heart to share with you is the importance of taking care of your health. So we've definitely talked before about the myriad of recalls. We've seen a lot of that. There's definitely more to come. I know that there are a lot of people talking about food insecurity. This is not anything new. We've been talking about this for a while. Planting your own vegetables and things are important. I would recommend, if you have the ability to plant things inside. Air quality is just a concern, as is water quality. There just is a lot happening in the world. So again, I encourage you to seek God. It is definitely not, I do not put myself in a place where I would tell you what will be safe for you and not but I will tell you what God says. Taking care of your health is important. And so when you're thinking about health, I want you to think about your physical health. So what are you doing to take care of the physical body and your vessel? What are you doing emotionally to take care of yourself? Sometimes you're going to need to decompress and step away from being on your cell phones, being around technology all of the time. You have to recognize what is present when we have so many devices, everything attached to Bluetooth and all around you all the time. Think about the ways in which you focus on your breathing, on peace, meditation. How do you come back to center? How do you clear the noise? How do you give yourself really time for yourself where you are not pulled in 9,000 different directions or thinking about things that are outside of your control? You need to find ways to bring yourself back to peace. The practices that you bring in now are going to be really helpful for you as we go through the seasons to come. So I highly encourage you to think about that. And then spiritually, I think sometimes when we think about health and well-being, we don't think about spiritual. And that is critical for you. Whatever ways you navigate your spiritual self in terms of health and well-being, it is critical that you are doing those practices regularly. For some of you, that may be having a regular prayer life. What does it look like to double down on that now? Is it, a prayer time in the morning? Is it prayer time in the afternoon? Is it prayer time in the evening? It cannot simply be that when you pray, it is just repeating the same thing over and over again. And part of what happens to build faith within us is that when we pray, we create space to hear from God. So I encourage you, in whatever your spiritual hygiene looks like, to make sure that you have time where you are just still so that you can hear. But taking care of your body, this whole vessel, is really important. And it's not enough to just focus in on one part. You need to be focused on the whole. And so a couple of other things that I wanted to share with you today. For many of you who are, I'm going to say, maybe enlightened, highly sensitive, for those of you that recognize the depth of your spiritual connection, whatever you might call yourself, light workers, whatever, um, you're experiencing a lot right now. The energy shift in across the earth is really significant. It's going to be like this until May. Then we're going to have a season where it doesn't feel quite as intense, or perhaps it just simply is that we become more accustomed to it. And then in the midsummer months, it's going to heighten again. It's going to be really intense. So the more that you can create comfort around what it feels like to operate at this level of energy, it's better. You're likely experiencing a lot of moments where you feel yourself jittery. You're likely experiencing your ears ringing more than what you have been used to in the past. You're very likely experiencing some moments of like extreme clarity and other moments where you feel like it's hard to get tapped in. Don't worry. You are on track. You're just adjusting to what's happening in this moment. The other thing that's important for you to know, and those of you who have been, who know that you've been in conversation and you know that this is a season of elevation for you, you know that some of the promises that God has been speaking to you about that are here, and you've been waiting on those things. The message that I have for you in particular is that this shedding season is coming to completion. So for some of you, you might already feel like, yes, the shedding is done and I'm all the way out of it. For others of you, you might be like, hey, I'm still feeling like I thought that as soon as this year changed, I would not be in this shedding time. The way that I want you to consider shedding is this. The things that are coming up to be shed are giving you information about what is still present. And so your focus then is, as you're seeing something come up, is to then say, okay, God, so what else is it that I need to do to release this? How else might I give attention to what I am feeling and allow it to just shed, allow it to just go? What story might I be holding on to that is bringing this thing back? How might I allow myself to really be free from what has been? For some of you, you will experience the shedding season for the balance of the year. Some of you will experience it for, another few weeks. And then there are some that are already clear that you are like out of the shedding season. That doesn't mean you won't have shedding happen, right? Because of course, we learn, we grow, we shed. But it does mean that you won't feel it at the level of intensity that it's been before. And that should be really reassuring and encouraging to you. So the last thing that I wanted to share with you in this, and I'm going to wrap up this month's episode, is that there's I want to encourage you to create a practice and discipline for yourself, where you're asking yourself regularly, what does this mean, and what is the message? There are some who would say there's not a message in everything, and that may be your perspective. Some who look for a meaning in everything, and that may be your perspective. Wherever you fall in this, what I would love for you to be more aware of is that there is information that is coming to you all the time. God is always finding ways to show you, to remind you, to invite you back into the promises that have been set for you, to advise you and show you what is up ahead so that you are aware. Most of the time, we miss those things because we're really busy being busy. We're focused on the things that are in front of us. We're not allowing ourselves to have the space to be curious. Curiosity is really, really important. It's always important, but it's critical in this season. And what curiosity should do naturally for us is that it should bring up the question. We should want to explore it. And that conversation is one that we should have with God, right? So we have the conversation of, what does this mean? Like, what is here for me? What's here for me to know? The thing that is on the table for you is that the more that you lean into this, what does this mean? What's the message? The stronger you will be in understanding and trusting your intuitiveness, trusting the messages that God has given you, trusting what is flowing through you, trusting that you know. So similar to what I said at the beginning of the broadcast around deepening the relationship with God, this is now you also deepening the relationship with the way that God moves through you. It will be really beneficial for you to ask yourself throughout the day, what does this mean? What's here for me to understand? What might I have missed that I want to pay attention to in this moment? So if there are conversations that are still sitting with you at the end of the day that you had in the morning, go back to them. What's here for me? One of the best practices, and for those of you that listen to the podcast, you've probably heard me say this before, but to ask God to show you. I will always say to God, show me me. I want to see how God sees me as I interact with others, how I treat myself, what my relationship looks like to God from God's perspective. Because the more I ask that question, the more I am clear about the things that are patterns that perhaps I want to change, the things that are not serving me, the things that are not beneficial to me or to my business or to the people who I live life with, right? And so by asking yourself, what is the meaning? What's the message? What's here for me? You're creating a habit of being inquisitive about life. And what's beautiful about that is the stronger your relationship is to God and then to yourself, to your own agency, the less you want to trust the things that other people tell you, the less you want to just scroll and believe everything that you hear. I want to close by saying that, that this season it's not an easy season. It's not. It's not. A relationship to grief, we have to continue to build that, how we navigate through grief. What are our beliefs about releasing parts of ourselves, what life has looked like, the systems and things we've trusted in, all of that stuff. There is relationship. And for those of you that have done really big identity work, who have, shifted out of your careers and things like that, whether it was by choice or not, you've likely run into a lot of this, right? This exploration around what it looks like to grieve things that are not just a physical loss of a person, but that are a part of what you're experiencing in the world, like, changing a job and, no longer having that title, or it might be the relationship that you have with, someone else in your life. Grieving people who are still living is also a part of the work that we have to do. But grieving who we have been and how we've operated in the world is something that we absolutely will continue to do as we continue to grow. God is in a season of deep revelation of who we are to ourselves as well as to the world. Many of you already know you are in a season of great revelation. Like God is like bringing you to see yourself, almost like what the image that God is showing me. It's like front row in a movie theater, right? And like God is sitting you right in the center. So you see yourself on the stage. So you are unequivocally clear about who you are and what you're supposed to do in the world. And sooner than you'll look around and see the lights come on behind you, and you'll see that it was a full auditorium, right? That God was not just showing you, but God was showing other people. That's beautiful. But there's also this revelation that is happening within you in understanding what you are here to do in such a way that shifts the trajectory of your life and the legacy you leave for your family. And so it's a really beautiful time for so many people in the midst of the challenge that is what's happening in the world. And I hear God saying, I'm like deviating because I hear God very intensely in this moment saying, tell them not to be afraid. And I want you to sit with that for a moment. What does it feel like to not be afraid in this moment? What is required of you to sit or to be in faith in the midst of all the things that you see happening in the world? It's not an easy feat, right? Especially if we're focused on what people are saying, if we're focused on what we're seeing happen in the world, especially if we have a lot of discomfort with people who are making decisions on our behalf. It's not easy, but you will build your ability to stand boldly in faith through the disciplines that we've talked about in this episode. That's what is available to you, and it's important. I want to come back to the revelation. So, in this season, there's going to be a lot more revealed about who you are and what you are here to do. And in some cases, I know you're excited. Like, there's some people who are like, finally, right? But I also see those of us who are like, ugh, who are like gasping, like feeling like we are not ready yet. And I just want to speak to you right now and remind you God would never reveal you if you were not ready, if God was not absolutely certain that they had placed within you everything needed for you to stand before people and be who they created you to be. If there was any doubt from God, they would not have you here at this appointed time. But you're here at the moment of being revealed because God says you're ready. And they want you to be reminded that you are not alone, that they are with you, that they are guiding you and protecting you, supporting you, creating the space for you, opening doors for you. And there are many who feel like you're lacking resources, and God wants me to remind you that the resources come from God and there's an endless supply. So while you look at what looks like depleting resources in the world, or resources perhaps that feel like they're moving further and further away from you, that's just what you see. But faith is about trusting in what you cannot see and what you know to be so. This is just not a moment in time where we can simply trust what we can see with our eyes. The things that I mentioned earlier on about the ways that this moment is being orchestrated to create order, it's to create for people, the situations for people to follow, to fall in line, to literally be at a place where we're like begging that the situation would be solved. Like I literally see people saying, please protect us. You've got to protect us from the very same people who are orchestrating what you need to be protected from. How could you ever trust that? These are the things that are so important about why you've got to go back to God and trust this. Everything that is happening will have to be atoned for. It is not yours to call upon the vengeance or to require anything to happen, because that's God's. God is so clear that this moment contains things that must be so that we never repeat what has been. And at the same time, that vengeance is theirs. We will watch a lot of things fall and a lot of things fall apart. And it is really important for that relationship that you have with God to be the place that you go to understand why. It's like when you open a book and you know you can go to the back of the book because there's going to be a glossary, there's going to be some terms that are listed there. You've got to have God as that resource for you. Other prophetic voices I know will do our best to be here to share, but it's the individual relationship that is going to give you peace. I can give you clarity, and I will always, as long as God is speaking to me and encouraging me to share those things, I will always be here to do that. But that will never replace the relationship that you are intended to have with God. Not even by a long shot. No human person should replace that relationship for you. So that is it for this month's episode. I know there was a lot of different things in here. This is a really complex time, and it's so hard to walk the balance of this sometimes, to just truly share what God says, to not allow my humanness, because there's so many things I want to say right now, to be, on display, because this is not that. But I do want to say before I close the broadcast that for all the families that are hurting, that are in mourning, for the people who feel just so deeply entrenched in fear, for those who have lost their jobs, lost income, or unclear about where things are coming from, for those that are fear for their safety, for their loved ones' safety, and for those who have lost so many. There's so many people who have lost so many relatives and coworkers and friends. I know this is a tough time. I know it is. And in no way will my words wipe away any of that. I just want to say, heartfelt, that I see you, and I'm sending you true, genuine, unconditional love. And I pray that God would surround you and your loved ones with peace, that you would have clarity, and that He would strengthen your faith, that you would find comfort. And for those of you feeling alone, that you would find community, and that in your building, strengthening your relationship to God, that you would feel covered, and that you would begin to experience and feel hope again. And God has given me a message right now in the moment to just say that hope lives on the inside of you. You can generate hope by simply choosing it. You can decide today in this moment that what has been will not be tomorrow. And God is saying, if you trust in me, I will show you the way. I will show you the way. And what I know about God is when God makes a commitment, they stick to it. I'm sending you so much love and peace and blessings, and I look forward to seeing you next month for the May Divine Guidance episode. In the meantime, stay connected to me. You can find me on Instagram at the Anika Apple and at the Anika Apple on TikTok. You can find me on Facebook at Anika Apple and the same on YouTube. And make sure that you have subscribed to the Anika Apple Podcast. We are changing the name to Healing is Required later this month. So excited about that. I cannot wait until you hear the first episode and experience my guest host who came on to interview me and talk with me about the book and the change for the podcast to Healing is Required. And if you have not grabbed your copy of Healing is Required, I definitely want to encourage you to do that. So you can grab that at healingisrequired.com, or you can get it on Amazon or your favorite local bookstore. This is my book. Let me tell you, this book is a divine download. So in the same way you've just experienced God flowing through me, that is how I wrote this book. And in writing this book, Healing is Required, what God did was walk me through all of the reasons why healing is important. And that includes many of the things we talked about today, how we are designed to be in community with one another. And at the end of the book, the last third of the book is really about putting it into practice. So what does it look like to do your work to heal individually? And so I would tell you that if there is a blueprint for this time, this is it. And if you're thinking, well, how does that relate to what's happening in the world and the different conflicts that are happening? That is how. Because when we do our healing work, we impact the whole. There's a concept called the central soul in the middle of the book, and you can learn more about it there. But basically, our individual healing work does impact everyone. We get to tip the scales towards healing. And that changes the dynamic of what our experience is. And we want to be doing that. Not to mention the fact that for your family, that for the people who you work with, for the people who you lead, who are on your teams or you lead with in ministry or what have you, you are creating an impact every single day, whether you know it or not. And the more that we heal, the better that impact is for those who interact with us and the better experience we have in the world. And so you'll find God's divine words about what healing is, why it matters, and some instruction for how we can be on our path to healing, along with some of the stories that God laid on my heart to share with you. So I hope you will check it out. It definitely is a journey. Encourage you to have your favorite journal nearby, because you'll want to step aside and think about some of the things that are great provocations in there. And with that said, I am going to jump off of here, and I will see you next week for our episode for Healing is Required. I wish you peace and blessings.